me a landline, you are like, no, we want you to start from the basics. Instead, you are going to give the child the phones of today, the phones that are relevant today. Now, if we are going to get our agriculture working, we must follow the same model, where the science that we must push must be the science that is relevant today. That is the basics. Hence, it is called agricultural science. That is important. For the benefit of those just coming in, what I'm trying to explain is science is the foundation of agriculture. And every time you get into a person's farm and you realize that there is so much prayers, it is a pointer to the fact that the science is low. So we have people pray about things like, Lord, when we rain fall, how much sun will I get? How much of these will I get? All of these are science. And I know anytime I say this, the first feedback I hear usually is, oh, when they predict weather report, it doesn't usually stand. And I always reply back with, the weather report you get for free is not what you run with. You must look for weather reports that is paid for, because the weather report that you get for free talks about a geographical location and not your specific location. So there is a need to know that if I am going to get a weather report that I can work on as a farmer, there is a need to pay for it. I digress. So let me come back. Now, since we understand that science is going to play a huge role as it relates to agricultural productivity, it's important we now look at the different aspects of production and what science will be relevant. Now, for a farmer, the first thing is your input supply. What kind of seed are you planting? What kind of fertilizers are you bringing in? Even if you are doing land-based farming, what kind of land preparation are you doing? So we start off from the seed. Today, you realize that majority of vegetable-based farmers just do what we call seed recycling, meaning the seed they planted last year, they save some of the seeds to replant the following year, or harvest some of the fruit, take out some of the seeds, dry them to plant the following year. That is the predominant form. Then we have others who have made friends with seed dealers, seed dealers basically. I won't call them seed manufacturers. And you just buy seeds from them either because they are friends, they are colleagues, a friend to a friend, and all of that. And unfortunately, that is not the scientific way to buy seeds. Before you buy seed, you need to first understand, where am I going to grow this?
He's having issue with his network. It's typical. We hope that he will come back online very soon.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Mr. Samson, are you still there with us?
Yes, I'm here. I'm still here.
Hello?
I'm here. Hello, I can hear you, Mr. Oriaku. I can hear you, Mr. Oriaku. I'm here. So, please, if you can't hear me, if you can hear me, please help me signify, maybe by a raise of hands or a chat of just a yes. Okay, Mr. Bada, good evening, sir. Farmers Corner, yes, yes. Okay. So I said the first thing is from the seed. You need to know the environment you are going to plant the seed. If you've ever bought seeds from places like the US, the UK, you would agree that most of the seeds you bought did not grow the way they told you it would grow. And the reason is because the seed has been bred in a way to do well in their environment, which means the temperature, the humidity, the amount of light that is available, the amount of rainfall that is available, and so on and so forth. So you realize that these seeds were not bred for your environmental reality. That is one. Two, there is something called the pathogenic history of where you want to plant. So you want to plant tomatoes in a place that has tuta absoluta, for example, or you want to plant yam in a place that has nematodes. Did you take time to buy the kind of seed that has been built to be naturally resistant to the diseases that are predominant in that area? Because this is how they get better yield. Then number three is, why are you growing that thing? Do you know what you are growing it for? Take, for instance, I will use tomatoes because that's one of my favorite crops to grow. There are different varieties of tomatoes in the market for different purposes. There is this tomatoes called Derica F1. This is, I know when we say Derica, what comes to most people's mind is that same tomato Derica. No, I'm talking about a variety of tomatoes called Derica F1, which is a determinate tomatoes. Now, I cannot buy a Derica F1 and expect the productivity of a Padma, because the breeders of this seed have different purpose and destinies for this seed. So it's important as a farmer that you are aware of what am I trying to grow? What am I trying to achieve as a farmer? What are the predominant factors I am trying to fight against? I'll give a popular example that I think most of us would have heard of, vitamin A cassava. Vitamin A cassava was created for the purpose of producing vitamin A in malnourished areas. Now, if as a farmer, I say I want to grow cassava for starch, and I go and grow vitamin A cassava, yes, I have cassava, but I will not get the, what's the word now? The outcome I am looking for. Because the cassava for starch is CME 419, meaning the breeders of this cassava already know what they are doing. They have already predetermined what the cassava can do from the lab. So to try to buy seed, there is a need to know what am I trying to achieve. It starts from there so that you know what kind of seed to buy. So it's not about, oh, I have a friend or a neighbor that is selling seed. The question is, what are you trying to achieve? Because you realize if we can increase the yield per square meter, most of our farmers will move from that poverty line to at least middle class. Now, another input supply is fertilizer. For most farmers, the choice of fertilizer is either based on what the government is sharing for free, or what the government has given subsidy on, or what our friends are selling. And this is wrong. The choice of fertilizer should be based on your understanding of where you want to grow and what is needed. So before you buy a fertilizer as a farmer, the first thing supposed to be run a soil analysis. There is a need to know what the soil needs. It's more or less like the way I see fertilizer is like you are giving a food supplement or a drug to somebody. So the person comes to you and tells you, I am sick. And you are telling the person, oh, don't worry, I understand you are sick. Because I have a friend that was sick last week and they gave the person XYZ drug, also take these drugs without running a test. It doesn't work like that. Because when you run your soil test, you will get to know the pH first. What is the level of acidity and alkalinity of the land? Because if the pH is not okay for what the plant requires, whatever nutrients you put into the soil, the plant will not be able to access it. You will have what is called nutrient lockout, because it is not good for the environment. The pH of the environment is not good for the plant. So the plant, in trying to protect itself, will stop anything from coming in. Then with soil test, you will get to know the NPK, that's the nitrogen level of the land, phosphorus level of the land, potassium level of the land. So that by the time you are buying your fertilizer, you are buying to complement what is already on the land. Because you realize that as farmers, if we have anybody that is a practicing farmer, you would agree that almost every year, the amount of fertilizer you are using seems to be getting more and more, higher and higher. The quantity is getting higher. Because every time you supply what the land does not need, it destroys the integrity of the land even further. So you might think, oh, I am applying fertilizer, my yield is not increasing because the plant is not asking for what you are bringing. Then we do not even run tests for what is called micronutrients, because these are some of the things you need to test. In a farming, there is something called the law of minimum. The law of minimum states that what you need in the minute quantity makes the largest impact. Let me explain that this way. If we look at diseases that are as a result of the food we eat, you would agree with me that there are very few diseases you can connect with things like protein, carbohydrates, and fat and oil. Instead, most of our metabolic diseases are linked to things like your vitamins, your minerals, and the rest. Because you realize that those things that you need in minute quantity are usually the main determining factor when it comes to health. I will give an example. One of the most important fluids in a human being's body is blood. Now, as important as blood is, the simple thing that you have inside blood, which is heme, is simply iron. Question is, how much iron do we consume? Very little. But as little as the iron that we consume is, the role is super important that nothing else can play its role in the body. It's not like, oh, if I don't eat protein, my carbohydrate can over time be converted. If I don't take carbohydrate, my protein, the nitrogen phosphorus part can be removed and it becomes CHO. If I don't take fat and oil, the protein can become fat and oil. The carbohydrate can become fat and oil. But nothing can become iron as small as it is. One of the most important things in our body is called the ATP, that's for producing energy through what is called the CAC cycle. And one of the most important elements for that to work in our body is called magnesium, that acts as what is called a cofactor. Again, there is nothing else that can produce magnesium except magnesium. So you realize that as minute as it is, it plays a huge role. The same thing when it comes to farming, all of those things that we call micronutrients. Question, how many times have we gone to the market to buy micronutrients for our farm? Because we have been brainwashed to always buy NPK, forgetting that one of the most important parts in the whole of the nutrient is not the macro, but the micro, law of minimum. So you realize that that is another big part we are playing. We are making a huge mistake, which is input supply as it relates to fertilizer. Next, we have things like water. Now, I'll take an example again. Let me use cucumber. A typical cucumber plant requires about 1.6 liters of water daily to be well fed. But we have lots and lots of farmers today who are having irrigations on their farm, which is awesome. And when they turn on their irrigation, what determines how much they feed is, oh, it's like the ground is wet, let us stop. But the question is not whether the ground is wet. The real question is supposed to be, has it gotten up to 1.6 liters? Because if it doesn't get up to 1.6 liters, the plant is still dehydrated. It doesn't matter that you have supplied water. That's the equivalent of someone that is hungry that's supposed to eat 2 portions of food, and you give the person half portion. And they are like, why? But he has eaten. But has he had up to 2 portions? No. Now, there are moisture meters that can help you calculate how much water is getting to your plant per time. Now, all of these things I have mentioned are around input supply. Then there is the production proper itself. What good agricultural practice are you following? Do we even know what is relevant for the plant we are trying to grow? Because this is really, really important. Do we know what is relevant per time for the plant we are trying to grow? So, do you know the best practice for the tomatoes? You cannot take care of a Padma tomatoes the way you take care of a Platinum tomatoes. 2 tomatoes made by the same company, but there are ways you need to maintain them to get the optimal yield. From their pruning to their pinching to their destalking, do you know how to manage the plant? Because when you manage the plant wrongly, it cannot give you its optimal yield, because you have the plant struggling to survive rather than giving you its maximum yield. Then let's jump quickly to the use of insecticides and pesticides. I mean, this is super common today in our local farms. Everybody wants to throw in some chemicals so that their farms are healthy, nothing attacks the plant. And usually the way I try to explain this is, I want to believe that some of us, one time or the other in our life, we've had a cut on our hand or on our leg, just an injury at some point in life. Now, the question is, when you had that injury, did you notice that there were flies following us about? Question, was that fly following you or following the injury? I'm sure the answer we would all give is it followed the injury. Now, scientifically, there is a release from that injury that the fly can perceive that draws them close, or that brings them to the injury, that brings them to the sore. Now, the same thing when it comes to plants. Every time you have your plant having a pest disease, having a pest infestation, it tells you that there is something wrong with the plant already. Let me put it this way. Now, imagine when I have flies pursuing me, I decide not to treat the injury. Instead, I focus on killing the flies. You know that as many flies as I kill, more flies will come because the injury is still there. Instead, the right thing to do is treat the treat the injury. Now, the same thing, when your plants are having pests and insects and all of that running after them, trying to destroy them, it is a pointer to there is something wrong with the immune system of the plant. Now, when something is wrong with the immune system of the plant, that is not the right time to start pouring in all the insecticide, because the plant does not have enough power to break down those insecticides that it cannot push out. Instead, it will store it and affect your yield. But instead, the right thing to do is look at what is the root source of my problem. If you take note, have you ever asked yourself, why is it that grasses that grow outside don't seem to have infestation as much as the one you're taking care of? So why are there infestations on your plant? This substrate for growing is unhealthy. So instead of trying to fight the insect, treat the substrate, treat your soil or whatever medium you are using to grow. Once you treat that substrate to be healthy, it will help the plant to fight those insects back by stopping to release what was oozing or whatever hormones it was producing that attracted those insects. That is still on the productivity. So let me pause in case there are questions.
Wow. Do you have any questions so far? Please raise your hand if you do. Okay, I think as they are raising their hands, sir, I want to ask specifically about the last point, that is talking about the use of chemicals. So I just learned something very, very new today, that you don't just pour chemical to fight the insect, you have to treat the wound. So can you throw more light for us on how we can treat the wound as far as the plant is concerned? How can we know exactly what is wrong, what is attracting the insect? Is there like a test that can be run to be able to identify that?
The easiest thing is do proper land preparation. The soil, for most of us as soil-based farmers, the soil is usually the issue. Once the soil has any pathogen, anything affecting it, the plant would not be able to develop proper immune system. So it shows it, or rather than developing symptoms first, the insect or the pest that comes around is a pointer to something is wrong. They are the pointer. So the first thing is treat the land. So once you pick the land, the soil, what's the part of the soil, run a soil analysis. You realize that when you check your soil analysis, it will show you so many bacteria or viruses or fungi that are wrong with the land. That way, you are able to treat the land. And the good thing is today we have what we call beneficial fungi that we can buy, that we can apply to the land to make them healthier first. Let's give this example. How do people think organic farmers are able to produce without the use of chemicals? They are not doing any special magic or miracle. When you see where an organic farmer wants to start their farm, see how much time they take in preparing their land. They put in a whole lot of things in their land. They will say, oh, we are trying to do this, we are trying to do that. What they are trying to do, which is basic, is making the land healthy. If we have, some of us that had the privilege of going to farm with our fathers, You will see even at times before they plant, they put some ash first on the land. That is to treat the pH. They put in some mulching dead leaves on the plant, on the land. All of these things they are doing is trying to treat the land. Unfortunately, they did it without the help of science. So they did not know how to measure what concentration was good enough. But if we remember when we followed our grandparents to the farm, they did not have as much infestation or pests as we have today, because their lands were treated or their lands were a bit healthy. But today, we have our land not being healthy, hence the pests and all are on the increase. And those pests are supposed to be pointers to us that there is something wrong with the land. Unfortunately, when we see the pests and all of that, our go-to is, oh, let's get some chemicals in here. Let's throw in some chemicals. Let's see how much chemical we can pour on the land, which is a super wrong way to go. Save the question if I've answered the question.
Thanks so much. Yes, the question have been really, really answered. Any other person with any question? Okay, so I think we can continue.
Okay, so I've talked about input supply. I've talked about good agricultural practice. So it's important as farmers that we take time to understand the crop, understand the do's and don'ts of every crop. The fact that I have planted tomatoes all my life does not mean that what was obtainable 10 years ago or 5 years ago, even last year, is still obtainable today. So there is a need to update our knowledge on how do you manage this plant? How do you ensure you have good flowering? How do you ensure that you have good tomato sizes or fruit sizes? How do you ensure that the stalk is able to hold the plant up? All of these things are important. Then from there, we go to your post-harvest. What is the best way to harvest? I mean, it's a pity that today you still see a whole lot of farmers harvesting their tomatoes when it is super red and ripe. And they start complaining, oh, it has short shelf life. Yes, because you have allowed it to start producing ethylene. And one of the theory of ripening is once ethylene is produced, it only gets more and more and more. So for every crop, there is the perfect time to harvest. I'm using tomato as an example because, like I said, I love tomatoes. For tomatoes, you are made to harvest just before it becomes ripe. Harvest your tomatoes before it becomes ripe, you have automatically 2 weeks shelf life. Shelf life meaning you can harvest the tomatoes, drop it on your shelf, not inside AC, not inside fridge or anything. It will be there for 2 weeks, nothing will happen. It will be as strong as you took it out. Then, if you want it to last longer, oh, you harvest with the stalk, not cut off that small stalk on the head. By leaving the stalk, it can get to as much as 3 weeks. If your nutrition was properly done, it can get to as much as 4 weeks. Now, all of these things are science. It's not just about, oh, I just went to the farm to harvest tomatoes. There is a science in the harvest. It's not enough to just pluck off the tomatoes or your pawpaw or your whatever crop you are doing. There is a right way to harvest. That is on one part. There is a right way to store. So as farmers, especially farmers of the 21st century, we must know what is the best way to store this plant. I mean, it is a big error for you to harvest a ripe and an unripe of the same plant and keep them together. Because if there is anything we've understood with the science of ripening, when you keep a ripe and an unripe together, because the ripe is producing ethylene, it will ripen the unripe very fast, except that is your goal. But if that is not the goal, they should be separated. So, and now when I'm saying all of this, the reason I'm not giving the reason I'm saying this is, I am not saying look for expensive science out there. I am saying look for science that we can easily adopt. The energy it takes you to pluck the tomatoes from the stalk is the same energy it takes you to harvest it with the stalk. But harvesting it without the stock reduces the shelf life. Harvesting it with the stock increases the shelf life. So that when people are saying, oh, our tomatoes got to market, they're already getting spoiled, yours can get to market and still be strong. Just because you understand how to harvest. You want to harvest your yam, oh, you understand, I should not allow it to get any cut when I'm bringing it out. Because once you give it a cut, you have reduced the shelf life of that yam. Now, this is on one aspect on the science of agriculture. On the flip side, there is something called agribusiness. Again, before agribusiness, let me say this, that no matter how good you are as a businessman, you cannot make profit beyond the science you put in place. So the foundation is get the right science in place. And like a proper businessman that wants to apply science, understand that at the end of the day, it's a game of numbers and naira and kobo. So don't go into production with science in the name of, I know when I produce, people will buy. I always give this example. Everybody on this webinar, whether male or female, there is a salon you pass before the salon you make your hair. There is a church or a mosque you pass before the place you go for your prayers. Interpretation, because people live around you does not mean they will necessarily buy from you. So before you go into anything farming and putting in science and all of that, ask yourself, who am I going to sell to? Do you understand what the people you want to sell to will use the product for? So that you do not produce what the market does not buy for. Come and help us sell cucumber. Ask them what variety. They give me a variety that my market does not want. And we start struggling to look for, okay, who can we beg to just pick it up? This is not what they want. You must remember that you are not producing for personal consumption. So you must understand what your market will use your product for. What is my market going to use this product to do? I'll give an example I gave earlier. You want to go into cassava production. If my market wants to use cassava for starch, that is a simple instruction on what cassava I cannot grow for them, because I know what they want to use it for. It will take the same effort to grow TME 419 and Umukas, but one is vitamin A cassava, the other one is starch-based cassava. If you go and grow vitamin A cassava for a company that is looking for cassava for starch, they will see your cassava and reject it. If they try to be benevolent for some reason, they are going to price it super cheap. So there is a need to understand what is my market looking for, because what your market is looking for will tell you the science to put in place. When you put the relevant sciences in place that will convince your market you understand their needs, then by default, they will subscribe to you. Like I always tell people, in every other business sector that I have studied, it is the owner of the business that first chooses their customer before their customer subscribes. I'll give an example. I live in Ogun State. I know a lot of folks in Ogun State that uses Apple products, but we do not have an official Apple store in Ogun State. Simple, because Apple Store understands that their kind of market are not in majority in Ogun State to go and give them a store. Meaning they chose their kind of customers before the customers subscribe. As a farmer, before you start picking science and all of that, you must first and foremost determine who do you want to sell to. So let me use food, for example. Let me use a food product because it doesn't look like Apple is far off. Does that also apply with food? If I ask people in the audience right now, who is cowbell made for? Is cowbell milk for the rich or the poor? I am sure the overwhelming answer will be, oh, it's for the poor. If I ask who is pig milk made for, the overwhelming answer will be, is for the rich. Question, did they at any point make an advert and say our product is for the rich? No. But in their product design, they already determined their customer type. They already know their income level, their educational level. And these people only subscribe If I'm making any sense. As a farmer, we must also understand farming from that perspective, that our first job is to choose our customers. Who am I producing for? And to know who you are producing for, you need to clearly define what they will use your product for. I'll give again another example. I don't know if there are people that live in Lagos. If you live in Lagos, check out the distribution of Indomie. When you are in VI and Lekki, you see that small Indomie pack, the very small first one. As you move towards Surulere and Co., you see the super size. As you go to the interior part of Lagos, all those Mushin, Ikorodu, Okokomaiko, those very interior parts, you start seeing the hungry man size. Interpretation: Indomie understands where the market that will buy the product is. So when the person gets there and is saying, oh, I want hungry man, no, you did not choose them, they chose you. That is why they brought the product that you would like to your area for you to subscribe. So as a farmer, there is the science around understanding your market. There is the science around knowing who am I growing for. It will not make sense to go and grow for the poor and you go and package it like it's for the rich, because your packaging will take out your profit and they will not be able to afford it. Let me give again another example, because let me use this packaging for an example. If you meet people that use Apple products, you will realize that most of the time, Apple users hardly throw away the case of their Apple products, whether it is Apple laptop or Apple phone. Why? The packaging is so sleek that you feel like you are committing a crime throwing it away, compared to techno packaging, because they understand the market they are producing for. Let me give this example: Apple and Samsung. If you follow their business model, you know that Samsung makes part of the chips inside Apple. Yet, Apple users still believe they are superior. That you do not go for too much of a high tech that takes away your profit because of the market you are serving. If that makes any sense. So you need to know, who am I producing for? What are they going to use this product for? And as farmers, as I conclude, let me say this: as a farmer, I always say, try with the assumption that your market is lazy and dumb. I know that sounds weird. As you go into farming, come in with the mindset that my market is lazy and dumb, because you must put in mind that you are not a farmer because you farm. You are a farmer because you can sell what you have produced. I don't know anybody here that will say people come to me to pay me to produce and they just leave. They don't come back for the product. They pay you for what you can sell, not what you can grow. Never making any sense. Now, when I say assume that your market is lazy and dumb, this is what I mean, so nobody will feel offended. I think the latest iPhone now is iPhone 12. Imagine when iPhone 13 comes out, I say for everybody on this webinar, I reach out to Ogaji and say, please, I want to buy everybody on this webinar iPhone 13. Now, when the iPhone 13 is delivered to you, you realize that iPhone 13 came with a manual that is 10,000 pages big. I got you an iPhone 13 that came with a manual 10,000 pages big. And you are not able to use that phone until you have read the 10,000 pages. If you get the point I'm trying to make, you can't operate the phone except you read the 10,000 pages complete. I am pretty sure that majority of us will not use that phone. That goes to prove that no matter how good a product is, if the product is not easy for us to use, we will not use it. Meaning, we are lazy. That's the simple thing. I'll give another example. How many of us have ever bought a new electronics in our house and bothered to read the manual before setting up? The only time we remember to read manual is when we are stuck, and we will just flip the page to what answers where we are stuck. I'll give again another example. When you go to the market to go and buy vegetable, who would you rather buy from? The woman that will slice for you and or the woman that will not slice? I am pretty sure that majority of us will go for the woman that will. Interpretation. If your product is going to sell fast, there is a science. Make your product easy for the customer to use, you will sell faster. So if I know what my customer will use my product for, I should prepare the product in a way that it is easier for them to use. I remember years ago in Ojota, where when you get to Ojota, you want to buy tomato and pepper. These women have already blended tomato and pepper down. You just compare them how much oil you want, they help you measure and put it in a nylon. And they were selling fast. Why? Because we are lazy. So you must also understand the science around sales. So it's not just about production. Selling is a science. There is a principle around selling. There is a science that governs selling. You cannot just sell because you put it on the shop. There is a science. Understand the science so that you do not understand just the science of growing, harvesting, and storing, but also understand the science of how to sell. Understand who needs your product. Understand what they are using it for. Understand that people are willing to pay for time, meaning the faster it gets to me, the more I'm willing to pay. So let's stop there. I don't know if there are questions.
Thank you so much. So if you have any question, please can you use the hand raise function, or you can just unmute yourself and answer, or you can drop the and ask your question, or you can drop the question on the using the chat section. Do we have any question? Okay. I think we don't have a question tonight. Seriously, personally, I've learned a lot. And it's really very simple and self-explanatory. So I won't be surprised if there is no question, because there's a whole lot to take in right now. There's a whole lot to go and work on. Okay. Abdulaziz is asking if there is any clue on climate change for opium food farmers.
Yes, sir. Malga Farmers Corner. Good evening, sir. So the first thing is, like I always say, farming is not mysterious. We need to, when we say climate change, what we are really talking about in the farmer's term is rainfall and sun. How much rain, when will it come, sun, and temperature. And fortunately, there are bodies today in Nigeria that can give you the specifics of what to expect where you are. So again, like I said at the beginning, we cannot afford to pick up this free, what's the word now? All these free weather report thingy. A weather report for Ogun State, when you take a weather report and it's telling you for Ogun State, or even for Abeokuta is too big for them to give you specifics. So you need to pay for your specific location, so that they can calculate the precipitation and all of that around where you are based on your longitudinal and latitudinal point. So there is a need to actually pay for the science, not go for free. Then number two, if last year 2020 and 2019 taught us anything for free, it is that whatever we experienced in 2019 and 2020, 21 will be worse, as it relates to the impact of climate change. So for farmers now, they should start looking at irrigation-based system. And like I said, like I always tell people, yes, I know the argument is irrigation-based farming is expensive. True. I do not doubt that. But if you can increase your yield per square meter, you will realize that it is not as expensive as it seems. So you are a farmer, let me give you an example. You are a farmer that is planting 10 hectares of tomatoes. 10 hectares of tomatoes at the end of the season, based on the current reality on ground, you will get 50 tons of tomatoes. Now, what if you can just work with the science get your proper weather report, get your irrigation kit and all of that available, get all you need to get and apply proper science, and just farm on 1 hectare. On 1 hectare, Tomato just did it recently. She got 36 tons from 1 hectare of tomatoes. And I'm not talking about us that are, because if we say ours, it'll be like, oh, yours is soilless farming and greenhouse farming. Your own harvest is different. Fine. But you can get at least 30 tons per hectare, which means if you can manage to just do 2 hectares, you will be getting 60 tons, more than what you would have gotten normally from 10 hectares. So we must stop looking at how much land you are getting and start looking at it from how much yield I can get per square meter. So rather than how much land I can farm, we should change the conversation to how much yield can you get per square meter. And if I may add, as farmers, let's be deliberate and intentional about collecting data from our farms. Because the issue is most farmers do not even know why what worked. So you cannot replicate what worked because you're not even sure what you did right or what went wrong. So every year is a gamble, every year is a new mystery. Collect data. Data as little as how much rainfall did you have this year? How much rain entered into the ground? And these are simple things that we can do. I always say this, people always come to me and say, oh, why is it that Nigerian government always likes to go and import solutions? And we have brilliant farmers in Nigeria and all of that. And I say the answer is simple. The farmer abroad has data to back up their speech. We do not have data. So the guy comes in and he's a Nigerian and he's telling you, oh, I got X Y amount of tons in my hectare, blah, blah, blah. Okay, how did you do it? You don't know. How much rain? You don't know. How much water? You don't know. How much fertilizer? Which days of the week? You don't know. Now, are they going to write policies around your unknown? No. But the guy that comes from abroad has data to back up their results or their failures. And because of that, it is easier to turn that into a policy. So if I've answered that question.
Okay. So, sorry, a quick one, a follow-up question, sir. You talked about where we can get the climate report specific to our location. Can you suggest some of the companies in Nigeria that can do that?
There is Futux, there is Futux, Futux. Okay. They're on Twitter. I'm not sure of their long name, but Futux. There is AccuWeather, ACU Weather. There is AccuWeather. There are these guys in Ibadan. Oh, I can't remember their name now. They are somewhere in Ibadan, all locally owned companies.
Okay.
Yes, Futux. Then there is one in Ibadan. I can't remember their name.
Is it
Agro? Can also help. Sorry?
Is it Agro Data?
No, not Agro. Those are another group.
Okay.
There's another group in Ibadan. I can't remember their name. But we have looked now. The point is, don't go for the free version. Pay for it. That's my point. Whichever weather report you are going to go for, you know it is something you can bank on when they start asking you for what is the longitude and latitude of your farm. Not telling you a report for Ogun State or for Abeokuta or for Lagos. No, that's too wide. If they tell you it's a report for Abuja and rain falls in Guju and not in Asokoro, they are correct because rain has fallen somewhere. So you need to get for your own location, not for the whole city. You are not planting in the whole city.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think with this tonight, we are bringing this session to a close. This is a whole lot. You have taught us tonight. And before we close out, I think you have said a whole lot of things. Is there anything you want us to know about your company? Anything about your product, the product you sell, service you provide that we could patronize you?
I don't know what we just do. We are soilless farmers. We are tech-based farmers. Like I always tell people, when it comes into the use of science or technology, put this in mind. technology is not an answer. Technology is an enabler of the answer. Very important. Meaning, if I buy a calculator today to do my mathematics exam, if I impute the wrong figure, calculator will give me the right answer to the wrong figure. But when I apply those figures, it will still be wrong. That is what technology is. So technology is an enabler, and I always tell people, find a technology that suits you. We are a technology-based company. We are into soilless farming, greenhouse farming, and all. But we tell people we are not saying do what we do. Rather, do what works for you. If we can help you enable the process, we are available to help. But do what works for you.
So much, sir. All right. We know we don't take this for granted. We know how busy your schedule is, and yet you took our time to be with us this evening. We are very, very grateful. So the recording of this session will be on YouTube, and you could also share it along with other farmers so that they can also benefit from what you've benefited this evening. Thank you so much, Mr. Samson. We are very grateful.
Thank you.
God bless. Good night, everyone.